Ms. Schenecker, all counsel are assembled. I see our witnesses back on the stand. Counsel, you have an opportunity to speak with Ms. Schenecker?
Yes, Judge, we did.
All right. I trust we won't have any further disturbance. Is that correct, counsel?
That's my belief, Judge.
Bring jury. Have a seat.
Absolutely.
All rise, you're entering.
And everyone can be seated. You may continue, Councilman.
In addition to the other things we've already discussed about what you cautioned Ms. Schenecker about the use of alcohol on your first visit of July 20th of 2010, you advised her not to drive after drinking due to the possibility of increased sedation.
That's correct.
And sedation, in layman's terms, means it could make somebody sleepy or lethargic. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. So you let her know that alcohol, in so many words, you let her know that alcohol could, when mixed with these drugs, cause an effect that may make her not want to get out of bed.
Essentially, that's correct.
And there was good cause for your concern, wasn't there, Doctor? Because there was, at the time that you took over the case, an additional Axis 1 diagnosis for the defendant of alcohol abuse. Isn't that correct?
Yes, sir.
And Axis 1 in 2010 under the DSM-4 was considered, Axis 1 is a major mental illness. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Still is, even though we got a new, you, not me as a lawyer, but have a DSM-5 in newest edition, right?
Yes.
And let's tell the jury what a DSM is.
Diagnostics and Statistics Manual that is published by the American Psychiatric Association that collects symptoms into major classifications in order to improve the validity of psychiatric diagnostics and care.
And to improve that validity of diagnostics and care for psychiatric treatment, they set forth for any given mental illness under Axis 1 a set of criteria, outline as it were. If you see these symptoms, and it could fit this mental illness if certain of these symptoms are met.
That's correct.
I know that's a greatly generalized, but is that about how it works?
Unfortunately, a lot of the symptoms do overlap, but yes, in general.
Okay. And during your care, that alcohol abuse diagnosis as an Axis 1 mental illness didn't change, did it?
No, sir.
Because you didn't just rely upon a prior diagnostic assessment by some other doctor. You agreed with it as you became personally familiar with her care and her history and her behavior. Isn't that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. And one of the criteria among many in DSM for alcohol abuse that a doctor could consider prior to making that diagnosis is whether alcohol is continued despite knowledge of having a persistent or recurrent physical or psychological problem that is likely to have been caused or exacerbated by alcohol. And that criteria this defendant met, didn't she?
That's my understanding.
And exacerbated is just a $5 word for making something worse.
Yes.
Okay. And even at the time that you took over her care in July, there was yet another or a third Axis 1 diagnosis, and that was pathological gambling, wasn't there?
Yes, sir.
And among the diagnostic criteria for pathological gambling or gambling disorder, I think is what they refer to it in today's DSM, is that there are persistent and recurrent problematic gambling behaviors leading to clinically significant impairment or distress as indicated by the individual exhibiting 4 or more of the following criteria in a 12-month period. And it gives a lot of examples, and you have to see if she meets 4 or more. Is that how it works?
Yes, sir.
And then B, the gambling behavior is not better explained by a manic episode.
Yes, sir.
So a diagnosis for pathological gambling then or gambling disorder now has to be something separate and apart from a bipolar manic period.
According to that definition, yes, sir.
Okay. Now, what I'm going to do, Doctor, is I want to show you Stage 42B. I'm trying not to mix them up. These are some medications that were, 32. Let me show you 37A, excuse me. Some medications that were recovered from Ms. Schenecker's nightstand on the 28th following the police arriving at their home. One of them is hydrocodone, oxycodone, lithium, and benztropine. Now, each of those medicines have cautionary warnings on the bottles about not consuming them and taking alcohol. Isn't that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And let me show you what's in evidence in State's Exhibit 42B, which are medications found and recovered from Ms. Schenecker's master bedroom. And these were all prescribed by you in January of 2011. And I'll ask you to read the names because I'll butcher them.
Buspirone, lamotrigine, which is Lamictal, venlafaxine, which is the Effexor, Coumadin, which I did not prescribe,
Okay.
and warfarin, which is another Coumadin bottle, which I did not prescribe,
I've just put another one down in front of you because I forgot to take that out.
and citalopram, which I did prescribe, but I believe this was later on in the course of treatment.
Okay. Well, yes, these were, they bear dates in January of 2011. But at least 3 of those drugs are drugs that were prescribed for her to assist her in managing her mental illness. Isn't that correct?
Yes, sir.
And each of those narcotics that are, or drugs, excuse me, that are in the pill bottles have those same warnings, telling her what you told her the very first time you met her, which is don't mix these drugs with alcohol.
Yes, sir. In the package insert, that would include that.
Okay. Well, and what I'm, so I don't mislead you, on the back, in small typing, there's a warning.
Yes, sir. That's true. Yep.
And you say there's yet an additional warning that comes in the packaging?
Yes, sir.
And tell us about that.
So the package insert is provided by the manufacturer of the medication to provide information, extensive information about side effects and adverse reactions and what to refrain from and some information about what to do if you experience a side effect.
Now, as her treating psychiatrist starting in July of 2010, you were not limited by the sources of information you could consider in managing her care. Isn't that correct?
Can you explain what you're asking with
Well,
that?
yes. What I'm asking is it fair to say that you want as much information pertinent to her case that you can have to give her informed care?
Yes.
And whether it be from family, prior medical visits or hospitalizations, or consultations with other doctors, or even more sources. Is that fair to say?
In general, yes, sir.
Okay. But one of the major sources in psychiatric treatment of this defendant was her own self-report of how she was feeling, her thoughts, and how she was doing in life. Isn't that correct?
Yes.
Now, in psychiatry today, and even in 2011, there were medical tests, imaging tests, the PET scan or the MRIs that can show a doctor directly or inferentially that there may be something structurally wrong in the brain. Is that correct? Like a tumor or maybe deterioration or something like that of the brain?
Yes, sir.
Okay. But then and now, there is no medical test that can tell you what a patient is thinking at any given time. Isn't that correct?
That's correct.
And so you place a lot of reliance, and you did in this case with Ms. Schenecker, on what she reported.
Yes.
Okay. You've indicated that the term suicidal ideation, that means suicidal thoughts, is that right?
Yes.
So homicidal ideation means homicidal thoughts?
Yes.
Tell us, we've been kicking this term around. Psychosis is what?
Psychosis is a problem with thought. So either with perceptions, such in the case of hallucinations or illusions, or in the organization of thinking, it can encompass also thoughts of that people are like paranoia, thoughts of people trying to hurt you that are, again, beyond the realm of reality.
Okay. So in that very first meeting, she denied having suicidal ideations, homicidal ideations, intent or plan. Isn't that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Later on in that same report, you noted, going back to the alcohol, you had discussed with her not only abstinence, but substance abuse treatment. And you documented that Ms. Schenecker was not interested in AA or substance abuse treatment, but she reported that she will decrease use. Isn't that correct?
Yes, sir.
And she reported no mood or psychiatric symptoms. Is that correct? I'm sorry, July 20th, 2010. I believe in your report you wrote patient denied psychotic symptoms.
Yes, sir. That's
Okay.
correct.
And you didn't observe any psychotic symptoms where she's hearing voices or her behavior is directed by some internal stimulus. You didn't observe that at that time, did you?
That's correct.
Okay. And I'm going to try to move fast through this and take as much time you needed in your response because you've gone through daily care, so I'll highlight a few things. But the next time on July 23rd or 3 days later, you have a phone call with her And at that time, when you're talking about essentially leg jerking and tardive dyskinesia symptoms, she denied yet again over the phone suicidal thoughts, homicidal thoughts, or psychotic symptoms. Isn't that correct?
Yes, sir.
3 days later, you have another phone call with her where she's talking about the leg jerking. You're talking about a course of medication with her for the leg jerking, and you talk to her, and she again reports no suicidal thoughts, no homicidal thoughts, no psychotic thinking. Isn't that correct?
Yes, sir.
Again, another phone call, yet 3 days later again, talking more about tardive dyskinesia and the leg jerking, and yet again she does not report suicidal thoughts, homicidal thoughts, psychotic thinking. Isn't that correct?
Yes, sir.
Now, let me stop for a second and talk about tardive dyskinesia with you for just a minute, Doctor. Tardive dyskinesia is a disease that happens as a result, or can be the result of continued exposure or use of antipsychotic drugs. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
The symptoms can be involving the tongue or the use of the jaw or the shaking of extremities, among other things?
Yes, sir.
Is that right? There is no necessarily correlation between the showing of tardive dyskinesia symptoms, shaking and psychotic thinking, is there?
That's my understanding, sir.
Okay. So when she's showing these type of shaking or showing these type of jaw movements, it doesn't necessarily mean that there's psychotic thoughts in her mind, delusions, hallucinations, anything like that, right?
That's my understanding,
Okay.
yes.
So if she is seen exhibiting signs of tardive dyskinesia and those kind of shakings 18 hours after the murder, it doesn't necessarily mean those same symptoms were present 18 hours before, right?
That's my understanding.
Because those symptoms come and they go. They're transient, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And tardive dyskinesia symptoms can be increased or triggered by stress, can't they?
Yes, sir.
And a stressor could be the commission of a violent offense, couldn't it?
Yes, sir.
Klonopin was prescribed to help her with this, wasn't it?
Yes, sir.
The tardive dyskinesia.
Yes, sir.
And if she hadn't taken Klonopin for some period of time, the symptoms could have returned because of that.
Yes, sir.
Okay, doctor, let's go back, if we can, to your chronological treatment. On August 3rd of 2010, as you've indicated before, you saw her, you discussed a variety of things. On that time, she said there's no homicidal thoughts, no suicidal thoughts, no psychotic thoughts, and you observed no psychotic behaviors, correct?
That's correct.
Going back to the next one, which is going to be your treatment on August 10th, a week later. Again, you speak to her about a number of things. She denies feelings of helplessness, hopelessness, guilt, sleep disturbances, suicidal ideation, or homicidal ideation, correct?
Yes, sir.
She denied psychotic symptoms, or homicidal or suicidal plans, intent. Isn't that correct?
Yes, sir.
Once again, in this August 10th meeting with her, you talked to her again about the risks of drinking in the context of her psychotropic medications, didn't you?
Yes, sir.
She expressed understanding and agreement with what you told her about those risks, didn't she?
Yes, sir.
She had continued what is mild depressive symptoms?
Mild depressive symptoms are a small amount, or you could say, or a small intensity of sadness, maybe some low energy. So a small or mild amount or intensity of symptoms that make up the diagnosis of depression.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Sure.
If we could move on to your next visit, on August 27th. At the outset of your care of her, you're seeing her almost every week.
Yes, sir.
Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And what you indicated that her outpatient program or treatment was intensive.
Yes, sir.
Okay. She's not only seeing you on a frequent basis, she's also seeing, among other people, a licensed mental health counselor for psychotherapy, talk therapy, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Concerning August 27th, she also denied psychotic symptoms at that time, didn't she?
Yes, sir.
She also denied having suicidal thoughts or homicidal thoughts, plans, or intent. Isn't that correct?
Yes, sir.
Again, you advised her of the risk associated with use of alcohol on psychotropic medications on this date, too, right?
Yes, sir.
It must have been quite a concern for you because you're talking and re-advising her about those risks virtually every meeting, aren't you?
Anytime that these are comorbid or co-occurring, occur together, that is standard to review those risks. Yes, sir.
Okay. You see her, let's see, that date on 8/27, 31 days in August, 4 plus 7, 11 days later, you see her on September 7th of 2010. And at that time, isn't it correct, she denied feelings of helplessness, hopelessness, guilt, sleeping, suicidal ideation, or homicidal ideation?
Yes, sir.
She denied psychotic symptoms.
Yes, sir.
She says she's abstaining from alcohol, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. After that September 27th meeting with her, you had a conversation with her. I'm sorry, did I say 27th? I meant to say September 7th. You have a conversation with her 2 days later about medication for her thyroid dyskinesia, and yet again, she says she has no suicidal thoughts, no homicidal thoughts, no psychotic symptoms. Isn't that correct?
Yes, sir.
5 days later from that phone call, she comes into your office again, which would have been 1 week after your last time. She's complaining of mild depressive symptoms and mild irritability and a lack of energy.
Yes, sir.
Okay. But she denied feelings of helplessness, hopelessness, guilt, suicidal thoughts, or homicidal thoughts at the present time. Isn't that correct?
Yes, sir.
And she denied symptoms consistent with mania or hypomania.
Yes, sir.
And she denied psychotic symptoms. Isn't that correct?
Yes, sir.
She said her symptoms were 30% improved from the week before, didn't she?
Yes, sir.
As indicated on page 2 of that 3-page report under plan, you indicated that she was re-advised of the risk of drinking in the context of her psychotropic medications, and the patient was advised not to drive if experiencing sedation, right?
Yes, sir.
And she, Mrs. Schenecker, expressed understanding and agreement with those risks and those warnings, didn't she?
Yes, sir.
Two weeks later, on September 28th, she's back in your office talking about mild depressive symptoms, but she denied feelings of helplessness, hopelessness, guilt, suicidal thoughts, or homicidal thoughts. Isn't that correct?
Yes, sir.
She indicated there were no hallucinations, delusions that she was experiencing.
Yes, sir.
And your assessment near the bottom of the page was that the patient had the capacity to make medical decisions, right?
Yes, sir.
Because if she didn't have the capacity to make medical decisions, there would have been other steps you may have considered following, wouldn't there?
Yes, sir.
And what would those have included?
She may have been placed, we would have to obtain a surrogate for care in order to continue her care.
But that wasn't necessary at that time, right?
No, sir.
Now, on that meeting, in the third enumerated sentence, you've moved away a bit from complete abstinence and said that she can have no more than one alcoholic drink a day. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Risk reduction.
And can you explain why there would have been, these are my words, not yours, some movement on your part away from complete abstinence in your plan for her?
Yes, when a patient fails to be able to cut down, the goal would be fails to obtain complete abstinence, the goal is risk reduction. You move towards a risk reduction model of treatment in order to, again, facilitate reduced consequences.
Is that, and I'm not being critical, but is that essentially an acknowledgement or concession on your part that she's not going to abstain? She's not going to be completely sober? Or the risk of that, the likelihood of that is low?
At this particular time, yes, sir.
At that particular time?
Yes, sir.
Okay,
Yes, sir.
thank you.
Sure.
Moving on to October 12th, again, she reported greatly improved depressive symptoms. She said there's no hallucinations, no delusions. She wasn't thinking about suicide. She wasn't thinking about homicides, was she?
That's correct, sir.
Okay. No psychotic symptoms. That's what she reported.
That's correct, sir.
Next time you see her is 14 days later. Again, she reports no suicidal thoughts, psychotic symptoms, hallucinations, or delusions, and you don't observe them. Isn't that correct?
Is that October 26th, sir?
Yes, sir.
Yes, that's correct.
Again, on assessment, the last couple sentences there, you indicated no gambling in 8 months, alcohol abuse. Patient has capacity. What's meant by that phrase, sir?
Patient, we assess for capacity to make medical decisions at that point.
Down in the plan on the following day, under the third enumerated paragraph, you indicated the patient was to attend AA and encouraged to reduce and stop alcohol intake.
Yes, sir.
Isn't it correct that her alcohol use, although you've indicated it was kind of in the background, was a continuing medical concern that you had in her care?
Yes, sir.
Because of the risks that it placed, the limits it may have placed on the care you're providing, the effectiveness of the drugs.
Unfortunately, alcohol has effects on many things, but including that, yes, sir.
Okay. And in layman's terms, given her mental illness, these psychiatric symptoms or psychiatric medications that she's being prescribed, you're telling her at every juncture to limit or abstain from alcohol because it just isn't good for her health, in so many words. Isn't that correct?
Yes, sir.
Next time you talk to her is November 3rd, about a week later, about a Klonopin refill. Klonopin deals with the tardive dyskinesia symptoms, is that right?
Yes, sir.
And during that conversation of whatever length it was, again, she says, don't have any homicidal thoughts, no, I don't have any suicidal thoughts, and don't have any, essentially, psychotic symptoms. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Again, another telephone call on December 1. She reports no homicidal thoughts, no suicidal thoughts, no psychotic symptoms. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
2 days later, you meet with her in person. You encouraged her to attend daily AA meetings to help maintain cessation, didn't you?
Yes, sir.
Alcohol. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
She denied again psychotic symptoms, homicidal ideas, suicidal ideas. Isn't that correct?
Yes, sir.
Although her mood was down, as reported in the mental status exam, she was linear, logical, goal-directed. What does that mean?
So she wasn't displaying disorganized thought processes, which could indicate, in some cases, not all cases, but in some cases, psychosis.
Okay. Next meeting, as you already told us, was about a week later, December 10th. She talks about the problems with her daughter and partner, didn't she?
Yes, sir.
And that was a stressor in her life and could have affected her mental health. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And that's why it's noted.
Yes, sir.
At that time, even though she's expressing those stressors, she's denying having any homicidal thoughts, suicidal thoughts, or psychotic symptoms. Isn't that correct?
Yes, sir.
Now, by this time, by December 10th, however, you've gotten some emails from her husband, Parker Schenecker. Isn't that correct?
Yes.
And he's given you some information that is either contrary to or in addition to what Ms. Schenecker is telling you, isn't it?
Yes. And again, I don't have those emails, so I don't know exactly when those line up
Okay.
as far as the dates, but
Well, let me see if I got them here. Showing you what I had marked as 101. If you want to take a look at the contents, it should be the same thing. You recognize Exhibit 101 as a series of emails that you received from Parker Schenecker and your responses to him.
yes, sir.
And you considered those in your treatment of the defendant, didn't you?
Yes, sir.
Because it was information from a collateral source, a concerned collateral source.
Yes, sir.
Your Honor, move States 101 and evidence.
No objection.
Proceed without objection.
And Parker Schenecker, in those emails, and they're dated in November and the early part of December, tells you in so many words, he doesn't think you're getting all the information. Isn't that correct?
Yes, sir.
So he gives you some more insight into how Julie Schenecker, his wife, is acting and behaving, and he reports to you a motor vehicle incident that led to her going into rehab.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And in these emails where Parker Schenecker is trying to assist his wife's care by providing you information, he asks some questions that you cannot respond to because of the limitations placed upon you by the federal law HIPAA, right?
Yes, sir.
And it's after that, or as a result of that, that on December 10th, you talk to her about, would you execute a release so I can talk to people about your care and help you out with a full picture of what's going on?
Yes, sir.
And you specifically mentioned her husband, didn't you?
Yes, sir.
And she wouldn't do it. She would not execute that release, right?
Initially, she wanted to think about it, but then at the point of the end of this, the evaluation on December 10th, my recollection is that it was a no. She declined.
And that was fully her right under the law, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. But it limited your ability to talk to Parker Schenecker about his wife's care.
Yes, sir.
And during the part of your mental status exam on that date, you indicated that among other things, there were no hallucinations or delusions, and her insight and judgment were fair to good.
Yes, sir.
Next time you see her is 3 days after Christmas on 12/28/2010. she had some vague suicidal thoughts without plans or intent. I think you've described that before. It wasn't specific enough to cause you concern to Baker Act to involuntarily commit her. Is that correct?
Yes, the Baker Act mandates that it's imminent. So if you had suicidal thoughts 2 years ago, you can't take away somebody's rights for that.
She denied psychotic symptoms on 12/28/2010. Is that correct, sir?
Just confirm that. Yes, sir.
She also told you she was not attending her AA meetings.
Yes, sir.
It's this time on 12/28/2010 where she reported what you have described as a craving for oxycodone.
Yes, sir.
Does your use of the word craving indicate something more than just asking you for a prescription?
Yes, sir.
Tell us what you meant when you used the word craving in your report.
I don't recall exactly the context, but craving can indicate a...
Objection, speculation.
Sustained. Next question.
May we be heard on that?
Yes, sir, you can step up. Next question, sir.
Within your practice of psychiatry, do you have a general usage of that term, craving?
Yes, sir.
And what do you generally use that term to mean?
Someone who is experiencing symptoms of dependence or abuse.
Again, even though she admitted to some feelings of guilt or helplessness and hopelessness and occasional thoughts of vague suicidal ideation, when you get to the mental status exam, she was still linear, logical, and goal-directed.
Yes, sir.
Is that correct? And she denied any psychotic symptoms, hallucinations, delusions, anything like that, right?
Yes, sir.
And you didn't observe any signs of that, where she appeared she may be reacting to internal stimuli?
That's correct.
At this time, on this 12/28/2010 meeting, you asked her to consider antabuse or similar medications to support alcohol cessation. Tell the jury what antabuse is.
Antabuse is a medication. If you drink, you form a toxic metabolite, and the toxic metabolite makes you nauseous. So it is a deterrent. It's used as a deterrent for the utilization of alcohol. It's to aid to cut back on alcohol use.
Is it fair to say that your suggestion for her to consider antabuse indicated you had a continuing concern that her alcohol abuse may be interfering with the management of the care of her psychiatric illness of bipolar disorder?
Yes, sir.
You also recommended that she would go to an outpatient substance dependency treatment to help maintain alcohol cessation, but she wasn't buying into that either, was she?
That's correct, sir.
You encouraged her to attend AA meetings, but she refused. Isn't that correct?
That's correct.
Again, you brought up the subject of with her of executing a release so you could share information with Parker Schenecker, but she again refused. Isn't that correct?
Yes, sir. I don't give up easily.
Okay. You next talked to her on January 4th. At that time, she says, I'm not thinking about homicide, I'm not thinking about suicide, I don't have any psychotic thoughts. Isn't that correct?
That's correct.
Now, you've indicated on direct examination, I won't spend much time with it, that although it's not specifically documented in your progress notes, you do have a distinct recollection of not only encouraging her to take advantages of all these programs to deal with alcohol, but you encouraged her and recommended that she voluntarily go seek hospitalization for her psychiatric problems, right?
Yes, sir.
And she didn't follow that recommendation either, did she?
That's correct.
Now, would you agree, doctor, that the defendant's decisions to be non-compliant with her medication regime, to refuse voluntary hospitalization, to refuse to give you access to information from her husband, to refuse an abuse, to refuse to stop drinking, all of those decisions had adverse, negative effects on her mental health?
I don't think that's a simple yes or no question, but so
Answer however you feel
yeah.
appropriate, sir.
At times, I think certain information exacerbates, like a partner relational issue, and needs to be revealed or disclosed or transferred in the context of a therapeutic setting. And so it's kind of a double-edged sword in that regard, but in general, I think it did play a role.
And what type of role?
In making her care more complicated.
Could it have played a role, those decisions, in her depression increasing?
It's possible.
May I have a moment, please?
Yes.
Nothing further, thank you.
Thank you.
Redirect, counsel.
Were there times when Ms. Schenecker told you that she was using more or less alcohol during the course of your treatment from July to December of 2010?
I believe so.
Okay. And do your records indicate the alcohol consumption that she revealed to you and talked to you about?
I believe so.
And during the course of your treatment, when December of 2010 comes along, is that the first time that her symptoms start to get more severe as far as the depression and the suicidal ideation?
I believe so.
Okay. So in December is the first time that she's talking to you about suicidal ideation.
I believe so, yes.
And based on your information from Parker Schenecker, are your visits in December after she was at the rehab facility?
I believe so.
Okay. And at a rehab facility, would someone be able to consume alcohol?
Actually, there have been reported cases of people using hand sanitizer and distilling it. Yes, I mean, it's possible, but unlikely.
Okay. And the rehab facility that she went to was for the alcohol issues?
Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am. Excuse me.
Okay. When Ms. Schenecker was talking to you about sometimes she was using more alcohol or less alcohol, that was also going on in the months of July, August, September.
To my understanding, it did fluctuate, yes.
Okay. And during those times, as Mr. Pruner went over, she was not expressing suicidal ideation.
That's correct.
Along with talking to her every time you saw her about alcohol, did you also talk to her every time you saw her about suicide?
Yes.
Okay. And although she had been drinking alcohol from time to time or taking her medication, she did not report to you during those time frames that she had suicidal ideation.
Objection to form?
Sustain this to form, counsel. It's redirect, as requested.
During those time frames, did she express to you suicidal ideation?
No.
When you were treating Ms. Schenecker in December, at that time, did Parker Schenecker begin emailing you?
I believe so, yes.
Okay. And the emails that Mr. Pruner gave to you to observe, were they the same emails that I had you look at earlier?
I believe they are.
Okay. Prior to receiving email correspondence from Mr. Schenecker, had you ever had any contact with Mr. Schenecker before that?
Not to my recollection.
When was the first email that you received from Mr. Schenecker?
According to these records, November 8th, 2010.
And that first email that Mr. Schenecker sends to you, was that a lengthy email?
Yes, it was.
Could you read that email that was sent to you from Parker Schenecker, and if you could keep your voice up, I would.
No problem. Sorry for the low voice. Dr. Obregon, nice to finally link up with you. I intended to contact you last week, but as I mentioned, everything is going on with regards to Yemen. I've been very busy. Julie and I have been married for 19 plus, so I've been through quite a lot, ups and downs with her.
I'm sorry, a little bit slower so the jurors
Absolutely.
can hear you? Okay.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
I've been through the hospitalization, the highs and lows. While I don't get invasive when it comes to her care, I am aware of outward changes, even though Julie is non-communicative about her BP most of the time, bipolar, I believe he's referring to. My background, 26 years in Army, son of alcoholic, functioning non-abusive, son of toxic parental relationship. Although parents were very supportive of my brother and me, 2 years younger in parentheses, vowed that I break the cycle and think I've been successful. Julie has had a pretty steady run for about the previous 1.5 years approximation, but I've noticed that everything started unraveling around the time she started exhibiting tardive dyskinesia symptoms, involuntary movement of her jaw and tongue in parentheses. Not really sure what you guys did after that, weaning off of Abilify, adding medications, etc., but she's been on a steady decline since then, has been spiraling down into deep depression, partly because of chemical imbalance, in parentheses, haven't been able to get her back to her pre-Abilify self, in parentheses, partly because of the stress of the relationship with our 16-year-old daughter. Don't know how much she's told you about the relationship with Calix, our daughter. but it has deeply, in all caps, affected Julie. Julie can no longer control Calyx, and Calyx has been disrespectful and verbally abusive towards Julie, calling her mental, unstable, ignorant, you're not my mother, you'll never amount to anything, etc. All those things that Julie's predisposed to believe in herself due to lack of self-esteem. And Julie has been both verbally abusive, calling Calyx a turd, and Julie basically reverting to an adolescent or teen and dealing with Calyx, not being an adult. Julie is completely distraught that Calyx, who truly is a sweet, smart, in all caps, very insightful young lady, in parentheses, has turned against her. Julie has always considered herself a victim, always. Things are always others' fault. She's not very introspective in my mind. At least, if she is introspective, she doesn't seem to take responsibility for her actions. The fractured relationship, speaking of Julie Calyx in parentheses, should be repairable, but Julie can't work herself out of the bad situation. For example, when Julie picks Calyx up from school, Calyx doesn't want to talk. Julie insists. Calyx says, I don't want to talk, in quotations. Julie keeps engaging Calyx. Calyx says, in quotations, you don't want to hear what I have to say. You told me if I have nothing to say, nice to say, don't say anything, in quotation marks. Julie will say, go ahead and say it. Calyx will say no. Julie says, go ahead. Calyx says whatever she was thinking. You're not my mom, you're disgusting, etc. And Julie gets angry with her. It's a never-ending battle. I can't get either one to disengage, but it seems as if Julie is the one bound and determined to argue. Other than Julie being a low-functioning person, Calyx is probably the most disgusted by Julie smoking. I've told you that if she were to quit smoking, that Calyx wouldn't have that to hold against her anymore. Julie says she wants to quit but still smokes. I realize how tough it must be to quit, so I offer to send her to an inpatient smoking cessation program. She says she'll think about it. Now, don't get me wrong. Calyx does her share of, there's an expletive,
Go ahead.
bitching about food, clothes, the house, etc. It's not 24/7 bliss with her either. And a new paragraph, back to chronology. After the end of Abilify and as you started her on lithium, she was depressed. I could tell, but it didn't seem to totally devastate her. Once on lithium, could be something else. Things have gotten worse. She's been drinking while on lithium. When I questioned her about that, she said, you told her that she could have 2 drinks a day. I didn't believe her until I saw a note from you, I think, that her dosages for her medications, along with a note, no more than 2 drinks a day, in parentheses. I don't believe she should be allowed to drink while on lithium, but I guess that's your call. Julie hasn't been a drinker. Traditionally, we may have a drink with dinner 2 or 3 times a week, truly. And there are periods where we might not even have a drink in a month. Until recently, alcohol has not been a factor in our home or lives.
It continues. You can continue.
So she's on lithium 3 days, and we go to New Orleans for my mom's 75th, 11th, September 2010. Julie gets drunk at dinner. She says she had 3 drinks. It was probably more. Walks outside to smoke and says she lost her balance. She fell in the parking lot, cut open her forehead, scratched up her arms, etc. Trip to the emergency department, or ER. We come back to Tampa and she falls down again in the house. She starts getting worse, lots of time in bed, lots of slurred speech, speaking as if her tongue was thick, very slow physical movements, thought reaction. Most of the day she gets carpool done and on time and food on the table, functioning very strained. Notice she's drinking more than just a glass of wine with dinner, bottles of wine coming and going, a large bottle in a few days. That's a lot for Julie. She's obviously drinking in the afternoon. She had a glass of wine, had already had at least one right before taking our son to soccer practice. When I questioned her about it, she got angry and asked how it was different than when I had a beer at dinner at a restaurant, then drive us home. I left it alone. In an attempt to try to settle things down, I recommended to her that she go visit a friend for a while and let me get Calyx into counseling. Julie goes to Fort Myers to stay with Marcia, a friend from the Army. She's there for almost a week. While she's there, she says that she quit smoking, went to a hypnotist and acupuncturist. She comes back saying she hasn't smoked for a few days and hasn't had a drink for a few days. Julie returns and is smoking, considerably less, but still smoking, and begins drinking again. Drinking starts to affect the kids. They start mentioning it to me. The kids tell me they don't feel safe when Julie drives. Bo refuses to let her drive him to soccer. As he says, she nearly misses the mailbox and turns in front of a car going to the practice fields. Bo felt in danger. Bo tells me that she turned left on a red at a light before, and when questioned, she told him that it's okay. November 2nd, during a ride home from school, Julie backhands Calix across the face multiple times while Calix is driving, then gets after her again when they parked in the driveway. November 5th, Calix tells her counselor about the November 2 session. November 6th, police and Child Protective Services come to the home. I'm in Dallas, decide that Calix is in no imminent danger. Julie's memory is shot. She can't remember minute to minute sometimes. She certainly can't remember what she said to Calix, which frustrates Calix because Julie says hurtful things but only remembers what Calix says to her. Julie can't remember a question I've told her not only 10 seconds prior. Today, Julie had a car wreck. I haven't seen the car, but Julie says the car is really messed up. No problems. No problems at ER. I told Julie that I wanted her to check into a hotel for that evening, that I can't have both Calix and her in the house after that. It would be just too much. I told her that I don't feel safe with her around the kids. She cries but says okay pretty quickly. Tells me that she's found a place by Orlando. I asked if it was a treatment facility. It is. I don't know anything about it. I plan to ask her to move out of the house, at least to a treatment center, so she can regain her stability. There's so much dependency going on in her body and mind now that she's truly a disaster. We all need a break. She needs some clarity and some sanity. Please don't hesitate to contact me. I'm willing to discuss anything about Julie's illness and situation with you.
Now, you received that email on November 8th, 2010? Or it's written on November 8th,
Yes.
2010?
Yeah.
Okay. And at some point, do you respond to Mr. Schenecker?
Yes. On November 10th, Mr. Schenecker, do you want me to read it?
I don't want you to read it.
Okay.
But at some point in between the time that it's
Yes.
sent and the November 10th, is it fair to say that you read it at that time or in between that time?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. And you respond to Mr. Schenecker?
Yes.
During that time, are you seeing Julie during November? Are you having any sessions with her during that time?
I think that was the month where we reviewed this, and
Okay.
she had missed like some sessions during,
And
or
she-
we had missed sessions
Okay.
during that time, yeah.
And so your information is that she was in rehab during that time?
That's correct.
Okay. When Julie Schenecker returns in December, is that the first time she starts talking to you about suicidal ideations?
On December 10th?
Yes.
I believe so.
Okay. And when you were talking to Mr. Pruner, and we spoke about it as far as involuntary hospitalization,
That's correct.
or asking her, she wanted to voluntarily be hospitalized.
That's correct.
Have we gone through all your records of your treatment of Ms. Schenecker?
I believe so.
Okay, so from July to January, you have your records in front of you that we've gone through and discussed at length?
I believe so.
Okay. Is there any note from those records that indicates that you offered her to be hospitalized?
The only indication was, kind of voluntary substance treatment, but I remember specifically again, and I don't know where this falls in chronology, that I offered her voluntary psychiatric hospitalization, which is a little bit different.
Did you receive another email from Parker Schenecker on December 31st of 2010?
Yes.
Is this time frame after the 2 sessions that you had with Ms. Schenecker where she told you that she was having suicidal ideations?
Vague suicidal ideations, yes.
Okay. Can you read for the jury Mr. Schenecker's email to you from December 31st?
Yes. Dr. Obregon, Happy New Year. Hope all is well. Just wanted you to know that I'm put out of town, I guess, with my son. I guess he's out of town with his son until Sunday night. And my daughter's at a friend's house for tonight, maybe tomorrow night. That means Julie's at home alone. She's been pretty bad. She's been in bed pretty much 24/7 for the past 5 weeks. Not sure she told you during your last appointment, just wanted you to know. Her energy seems to be non-existent. Her memory is shot and her balance is way off. She's been falling quite a bit lately. I'm not sure she's taking her meds. She seems to be taking meds, but I don't know the right dosages, and am not checking up on her to see. She's depressed, in parentheses, no kidding, but it seems that she's choosing this. It's the first time she's been like this for this long in 20 years. At this point, she's choosing to stay in bed. I know she can't will herself well, but she's mentioned suicide, but not that she's thinking of acting on it, hoping her energy is too low too. Again, just wanted to make sure the info you have is correct, as I know how she's prone to not tell the entire story.
Between the time that you received that email and January 28th, 2011, January 27th, 2011, did you see Julie Schenecker face to face during that time?
I don't believe so. I don't believe so.
With all the information that you received from Mr. Schenecker and your concerns about Ms. Schenecker's alcohol intake and the representations that Ms. Schenecker made to you about her suicidal ideations, is it your testimony that you still believe that back in December of 2011 that she did not meet the requirements to be Baker active?
So the imminent criteria, is it imminent? Is it something that without imminent action she will act on? I didn't have the evidence to take her way of rights at that time, in my opinion, my assessment.
As Ms. Schenecker's treating psychiatrist in the months leading up to the shooting of her children, what did USF do as far as your records go?
Objection.
You can approach on that.
Dr. Obregon, was there ever a concern about your civil liability regarding the shootings on January 27, 2011?
Objection, form vagueness.
Can you like civil liability for University of South Florida or civil liability personally?
For you,
I'm sure. I mean, we think about it, of course.
nothing further.
May this witness be excused.
Yes, sir.
Yes, Your Honor.
Sir, you may step down and you're free to go.
Thank you, sir.
Attention, call your next witness.
Your Honor, may we approach?
Yes. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, members of the jury, I'm going to be sending you home for the weekend. And let's go ahead and set the time for return on Monday morning, the 12th of May, at 8:30. Stay on the same schedule. And you know we're going to come back, and back means to go to courtroom 53A in the fashion that you're very used to now. Sunday night, please get to bed early, get plenty of rest so you can be completely alert and attentive throughout these important proceedings. And give yourself plenty of time, as I've constantly requested, and do understand the need for that on Monday morning, so we can be considered everyone's time and stay on the schedule. You know, I'm going to remind you that we're taking that weekend recess in this case. Those important instructions, which must be strictly adhered to, and that is not to discuss this case with anyone, not to discuss it among yourselves, not to allow anyone to discuss it with you or in your presence. Again, if anyone attempts to say anything to you or in your presence about this case, you tell them you're on the jury trying the case. Tell that person to immediately stop. If they persist, you leave them at once. As soon as possible, you're going to tell one of the bailiffs who in turn is going to advise me. Again, I'll remind you, this case must be tried upon the evidence presented in this courtroom in your presence, in the presence of the attorneys, the defendant, and the judge. You're not to conduct any investigation on your own. You're not to visit any of the places that may have been described in the evidence, not to read nor listen to any reports about the case from any source whatsoever, not speak at all to the attorneys, the witnesses, the defendant about any subject to your deliberations are finished, and of course not to do any sort of research, gather information about, or communicate about this case, people and places involved, or your jury service through any means, including all those electronic devices. With that reminder, very important instructions, we're going to send you home and see you Monday morning.
All rise.
Jury's exited the courtroom, doors closed, you may be seated. Counsel, you indicated that was the last witness you had for today. Do I understand on your proposal that you wanted to go ahead and address instructions at this juncture as well today?
Judge, at the time that I asked that, I didn't anticipate that we would still be here at 4 o'clock, so I can do either at the court's pleasure. I can remain and do that, but I know that Mr. Train is trying to attend his son's graduation.
Well, one way we can approach it, I've gone through the proposed instructions which were provided to me by counsel. Literally, I can say there's no, quote, substantive disagreement. The order of presentation, I put them in that I would anticipate. There are a few little things here or there. For example, you need to get the latest version of 7.7. So what I've done is I've made a few markings here or there, and what I can do is hand this out to council, to both of you. If you can go over that, you can have an opportunity to consult and then provide me with an updated, corrected version for us to address when we do have a charge conference. So with that, why don't you wait and do that? There's a couple there that are probably not necessary. Well, actually, I'm going to send it all to you just like it is. Keep it in the same form in its entirety. That's for both council. We'll send that out. Other matters you wish to address before we adjourn for the weekend?
No, Your Honor.
He can make you a copy as you wish right now. Anything else from the state?
No, sir.
All right, we're adjourned. Monday morning, let's have everyone in place and ready to go at 8:30.